You're listening to Shoe In, covering the ins and outs of all things footwear, from sneakers to heels, loafers to slippers, and every type of shoe in between. Brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. And now your footwear insiders, Matt Priest and Andy Polk.
Hello, Shoe and Show listeners. Do not adjust your radio dial or your set because today's insiders are not Matt Priest and Andy Polk. I am joined, this is Matt Priest, by the way. I am joined by Sandi Mines, who is Vice President of Corporate Engagement at FDRA, and this is her first Shoe and Show co-host gig with me. So be gentle on us, listeners. Sandi, welcome to Shoe and Show. I'm super excited to have you on because you've been in the industry for so long. You know the questions to ask. You're an inquisitive person. You critically think. You're creative, and I love all those things wrapped up into one. So welcome to Shoe and Show, Sandi. Thanks for coming and co-hosting with me.
Thank you. I'm super excited to be here. I've brought one of my most favorite people from the industry to talk to today. So I'm really excited to have my friend Tom Kennedy on Shoe and Show today for his first time as well. He is the president of Boots at Wolverine that include the brands Wolverine brand, Bates, High Test, Harley Davidson, and Caterpillar. Did I get that right, Tom?
Yep. Thanks so much. Thank you. Thanks so much for the opportunity to connect. Great to see both you and Matt.
So one of the things that we do, Tom, I love Wolverine. I've been embedded in the Wolverine family for many years. I used to travel pre-COVID every year to the MLS, the Manufacturing Leadership Summit in Macau, which was always a good time. And I heard all the brand stories at that time, what the plans were in partnership with the factories. But Tom, one of the things we ask of our folks who come on is kind of explain their shoe story. And it's a little gimmicky. It's kind of podcasty, if you will. But I've been so blown away when we ask this question by where people got their starts. So I assume there's some cool story behind how you got your start, Tom. And so what is your shoe story?
So my shoe story is I came to Wolverine to run apparel, actually, Matt.
Right.
And about my role was to coordinate and to integrate all of the licensed and apparel activities about 6 years ago. And I traveled back and forth between the Boston and the Grand Rapids campus, as well as the international offices for about a year. And the opportunity came up to run the Sperry brand. It was really my first shoe experience. And it was great because while shoes are very different, there's a fundamental path of bringing a brand to life, bringing product to life, understanding your consumer, most importantly, and really being able to deliver not just a great consumer story, but in a business that's 70% wholesale, we have to create a great retailer story, right? And so I think those fundamentals carried over from my, several decade history in apparel. And I had worked at a footwear company before, but again, on the apparel side. So 20 years ago, I was in charge of product development and the apparel marketplace for Nike in the US. And so I've been footwear adjacent before. And also at PacSun, when I was president of PacSun, we had a large skate shoe business at the time. But this is really my first time developing shoes. And it's really great. I mean, it's the perfect category for the digital times because it is so easily to reflect on your phone and any category and any media opportunity, what makes a shoe different. It doesn't have to be on body. It can be held up. I mean, it's the beauty of the object, right? And so I think it's been an extraordinary opportunity for me to go to Sperry first. And I think the great opportunity in coming to Wolverine is I'm not a boot guy. So I look at the brands through totally different eyes, right? You see the opportunities different. You see the products different. And it's been great. And we've had, we had a great 21 and we had a strong 20 and we look, forward to an even stronger 22 across all the boot brands. But it's been interesting. I mean, even in a retail environment, shoes as a category are more insular. People move back and forth from ready to wear, accessories, et cetera. Like shoe people are shoe people. So I would say everybody's been really welcoming. So it's been really exciting. I mean, both the teams internally and the external teams have been all great. It's been really exciting to do that.
That's great. Tom, you've talked a lot about how the work category has been on fire. And during COVID, it did not stop. It just kept growing and growing. Tell us how you led the team through that moment. For the last 2 years, what has the work category what has it done and how has it progressed?
I think you have to pivot really hard and have no preconceived notions. When I got here, the belief was work wasn't digitally friendly because people bought work boots at the point of expiration, right?
Right.
Workers are like runners. They know when their tool is failing, right? So I think that what we learned really quickly is 67% of our people uncover new product on their phone. So while digital was slower to grow, it still grew really rapidly during COVID. I think the most important thing we learned was focus, focus, focus. We went from 800 SKUs to 400 SKUs really quickly. Mm-hmm. We had to, navigate supply chain challenges as has everyone else been. And it's more important to be in stock and being meaningful in fewer styles. I think that the other big thing we learned is how much we could work remote. You really had to take a brand that wasn't heavily digitize the brand, as well as digitize our customer experience. Like you couldn't visit a lot of people with boots in a bag. So you had to get really good at shipping them samples and doing a Zoom call and having them pick up the shoe and say, oh, now I see what it is. The thing we learned during COVID, Sandi, is people still wanted to see samples. We may have had to send them in an unusual manner, and we may have to let them keep them because of COVID protocols, but people still wanted to be sampled. Yeah. I think it was fundamentally, learning how to work. But I also think the biggest thing you got out of COVID is because people are working from home and you're engaged in a personal environment, and people still are, you engage with people differently. It's not just a work engagement anymore. You're navigating what they're dealing with in their personal lives at the same time, whether it's education or childcare. And so you have to learn to be really compassionate and empathetic, and over communicate. We always did once a week call-ins where I do, a 30-minute stand-up call. We started doing them 2 or 3 times a week during COVID because 2 things. One is more communication was better during COVID, and human interaction was better. People wanted to see people. So I think that we learned a ton in COVID that will propel the brands going forward.
That's great. I also wanted to ask, you mentioned that you were really focused and you kind of narrowed down some of the SKUs to what really mattered, right? Yeah. Talk a little bit about how you were able to open the doors a little bit more to growth and exploring different areas of opportunity like lifestyle and women's. And you were sharing a little bit about that in our last conversation. I'd love you to talk about that.
I think when you get to core work, listen, we're number 1 in branded. And so particularly with Wolverine, Caterpillar's number 3 in branded work. So it's really all about franchise management, right? A handful of styles really dominate that business. And so we had to focus those and give them each a reason to exist. Like for Wolverine, Floorhand really hits a sharp price point, right? Then you come out with Raider and Hellcat. One has recovery, one has comfort. So you really need to dominate in that, right? And those 3 franchises, plus Western work, which is huge, really kind of help us get that team focused. I think the biggest thing we started to do is, because you have time, is we started to look at data, right? So when you look at overall work, it's a little bit over a $2 billion market. And the fastest emerging category there is warehouse shoes. And I think that this is sometimes where you learn the most from an account, right? Like you start to see how fast an account is consuming shoes and go, this is a bigger opportunity than I thought. So how do I get in front of that, right? Mm-hmm. So warehouse shoes taught us 2 things. What a huge opportunity it was in both men's, but the even bigger opportunity for a work brand is it has a large women's customer, right? Then it takes you to a whole type of construction that's different. And so we started poking around and saying, where else does the brand have awareness? Well, Wolverine had a 67% awareness in outdoor, but no product or call to action. From my time at Sperry, I drove the salt water through the roof, right? I looked and said, Sperry doesn't sell any of the accounts Wolverine sells. There's obviously an opportunity for us to go after the frost and the torrent. And I think rain and snow is a $2 billion marketplace. And so we got aggressive with that. And I think we've had really great growth in lifestyle product in both the Frost and the Torrent. And then I think that we had always had a nascent hiking business, particularly in the farm and family channel. And I think we got aggressive beyond just the core wilderness and offered the guide and the contour and some new styles. And that really gave us an opportunity to expand the category, but more importantly, to expand the gender opportunity, right? Because our brand was heavily male. And we needed to get more women's eyes on the brand. I mean, we just did. And I think that it's very different. Look, and I have to be really careful. I don't want to trip over Merrell. It's a sister brand. They have a very clear opportunity. But my outdoor consumer it's different. They're more akin to someone who goes to Filson or those types of, heritage outdoor brands than looking for, what Merrell offers. And so I think we have found a really good way to grow. I think with Brendan and Blake, we've learned how not to trip over each other. So we grow and, it's different consumers in different distribution at different price points. And as long as you lead with that, you learn a ton, right?
Yeah, it's not a zero-sum game, right? Merrell and the other boot brands and Wolverine can coexist together and go after those two different marketplaces or consumer bases, if you will. Tom, I want to ask you two questions. One was a surprise when I started to engage with Wolverine and get into this industry that you actually, at the time, and I want to see if you're still doing it, had kind of work site delivery of product where people can go up to trucks and actually pick out product and order it there at the work site. So one, are you still doing that? And two, talk about channels where you're seeing a lot of growth in the space. When you go into a Tractor Supply company store, for example, it's dominated by Wolverine products. So tell me, how is that the clientele you're talking about, that you're steering clear of the Merrell aspect of the business, but you're really growing it in a channel like Tractor Supply Company?
Yeah, I think that the industrial service business you're talking about is high test, right?
Yeah.
Literally, we have tractor trailers where the back of them look like stores. We vie for contracts and compete with other people to be a provider for, the steel industry, the plumbing industry, any kind of heavy construction. And knock wood, with the Build Back program, that will continue to grow, and we feel great about that. So that is a direct-to-consumer business that we run through distributors that each have territories. That was relatively stable during COVID, but the big explosion there has been B2B when you talk about new channels. And then I'll leap to brick and mortar. I think that the opportunity for high test and those types of businesses to grow through business to business has been extraordinary because those customers know the product. They do their homework. A lot of it, as you know, is based on vouchers. And so that business is thriving. And it was a new world to me. The first time they explained to me that we have tractor trailers filled with shoes, that people do try-ons and how that works. And oh, by the way, it doesn't involve cash. It's an entirely fascinating business. And I think that it is really booming. And I think B2B is a big argument to that, is a big augmentation to that. I think your next question is about Tractor Supply, the Blaines, the Farm and Fleets, the Rural Kings. The retailers that really thrived during COVID were open, and we had a lot of them in the work boot area. I think that this whole ability to go into one of these stores where they service more than one category, these are retail networks that this could get me in trouble, do what a department store did 80 years ago. You can buy apparel, you can buy some groceries, you can buy
live chickens.
Indeed. It's amazing. And what's also amazing, Matt, is the level of detail they understand about their consumer. They know who he, she, and the family is completely. They know what they want. So for us, who have a very targeted customer, that business has been really, a gift. And those retailers are very different. Do you know what I mean? It's, you have to, it's just a very clean business, a very easy business, high volume stores in destination locations. And what's been fascinating is every question I get from a potential license or somebody who wants to talk to me about business is about, you do business in accounts we didn't know existed. And then I talk to them about the size and they're astounded, right? Everybody knows who Tractor Supply is, but there's a whole rung of them that are $2 to $4 billion retailers that, Matt, no one knows who they are. It's a whole nother world. And their consumers are incredibly brand loyal and incredibly specific. So for boot brands, it's been an amazing experience.
That's great. I want to pivot the conversation for a minute and talk a little bit about your diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. You have done so much on this front, and I wanted you to share a little bit about what you're working on, and it's really inspirational. So please share a little bit about that.
It's a really broad-based approach corporately. So Amy Klimek and I chair the diversity efforts globally. And the corporate efforts are about structure. How do you hire differently? How do you have diverse pools of candidates? How do you have a structure that allows diverse suppliers to provide services to the company? So we brought in Amy really spearheaded it, and I participated on the brand side, Global Bridge Builders which is local. And what they do is lay out the corporate structure. How do we do procurement differently? How do we do hiring, talent recruitment, and retention differently? How do we do training differently? So that's at a corporate level, Wolverine Inc. So Brendan has made a huge commitment to this as CEO. At a group level, each of the brands has another approach. So I work with a group called IPS that does really grassroots training to my teams. I mentioned earlier, we do a stand-up every Wednesday morning for 30 minutes. So they'll show a video about inclusion or a video about diversity, and then we'll have a Mento feedback session on that live stream, and then we'll follow up with that. So it's really, how do you do diversity that gets it not just at the corporate level, but way down to the most tangible employee, so they understand why the importance of diverse candidate pools, those types of things. Then the other work I think you're familiar with, we do Project Bootstraps, which is, we believe that we will continue to see trade jobs outpace trade workers. But it's not very diverse, as you all know, if the trade work is not. And so we're working with a variety of outreach programs, the NAACP locally. We just did a project with Uncommon Constructions to really change the face of trade workers, because a lot of brands want to change their employee base and they want to catch up to the diversity of their marketplace. With the work area, I need to change the diversity of those two, but I also need to change the diversity of my marketplace, right? I need to, in the most positive way forward, make it viable that trade work is an opportunity for people. And you don't ever want to tell someone that it's, they're not a candidate for college, or, you don't want to take that approach. We just want to make sure it's on someone's radar. So I think what we're trying to do, and it's a long journey, we're 2.5 years in, of how do we get more diverse employees so we have diverse insights to how to attract diverse consumers and really change the marketplace. And I think that I would say we've done a good job on gender. I would say we've done a better job on LGBTQ+. I mean, I myself am gay, so I'm very aware of that part of the population. I would say we have a long road to go with people of color, across the spectrum, Black, Latinx, Asian.
You've really done your homework, and you're really aligning yourself with people and educating, and it's inspirational. So it sounds like you're putting in the work, and you're trying to educate yourself and gathering people around you, and leaning on, those that can help you.
And we have great board advocacies in Brenda Lauterbach, who you all know from the footwear industry. She's been a strong advocate for diversity, equity, and inclusion for her decades-long work with Denny's, and she's been a great mentor and a great help. And then we brought in a new board member, Kathleen Thompson, who comes from the human resources world, most recently Walgreens Boots globally. And you need that at the board level. You need it. It needs to go from top to bottom and bottom to top. It can't be.
Absolutely, yeah.
It needs to be thorough. And you also need to understand how long the journey is. And I mean, it's not easy, and it's great. I mean, you really have to think about everything. And at the end of the day, you want it to be great for the employees, and you want to be able to create a great culture. But on the other side, if you don't do it, you're not going to have a great business because the world is changing. And if you don't change with it, you're not. And you can talk all you want about having to navigate it in the US, but if you can't solve this in the US, you can't be a global business because you have to be respectful of cultures and differences, regardless of where you operate. And so I also think it's changed. Consumers expect it. They expect more for their purchase than the product works.
Yeah, I agree with you, Tom. And I'm glad you made that last point because there are people we have a very diverse society that will bristle at maybe some of this kind of touchy-feely stuff, right? When corporations get involved in that kind of thing. And I keep thinking to myself, how do you best reach a diverse consumer base if you do not represent within your own ranks a diverse culture? And at the bare minimum, it's good for business, right? And so if you start there and you start to see that bringing diverse voices in and diverse perspectives and not always agreeing, right? Having some friendly and healthy conflict on things about how to reach consumers where they are, that's all healthy stuff. But my last question for you is, you talked about kind of building up more people of color within the business. And this is a long journey. And I think so many people are afraid of getting kind of named and shamed in our environment where Twitter like rules our lives, right? In a very unhealthy way. And so everyone wants that light switch. They can just flip on and attract a lot of great people to West Michigan who might look different and help us sell more boots to different types of people. But it is a journey, and demographically, West Michigan is not necessarily a very diverse place, right? So how are you critically thinking about attracting more people into headquarters in a way that will help meet the goals that you have to develop a more diverse culture within your company?
We're working with specifically a recruiter that specializes in bringing diverse people to West Michigan, believe it or not.
Right.
Their mission is that specific, Matt. And then it's community engagement. Like my team is engaged with the NAACP.
Right.
I have other team members, engaged with the local LGBTQ plus community. We did a project with Mosaic Film Festival, which starts with at-risk youth or minority or income challenged youth that want careers in film. And one of the things they're working on is a film project to highlight the diversity by neighborhood, because we're going to have to bring to life, not everything is what you see. And so I think it's going to be multi-pronged and long-term. And I think it's trial and error. But I think the most important thing, Matt, both IPS, our consultant, talked to me about, as well as the recruiter talked about, is you need to be transparent in the hiring. Like you need to be really realistic in the hiring process that we're on a journey. You're part of that journey, and this is what you're going to find in the community, and how can we help you navigate and assimilate? Like it's a lot more dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, I think there's humility that comes with it, right? I think if we all approach the opportunity in a humble way, that we're on this journey and we can't fix it overnight or change it overnight, but help us be a part of it in a collaborative way. I think that goes a long way with folks. It really does. It's that honesty and transparency you speak of.
I mean, Chris, as part of his Merrill Goals Day, did a panel discussion on diversity where he had Scott Welsh from Global Bridge Builders. He had diverse employees, myself included, talk about it. And I think you have to be as visible as Chris was with his team. And this is what's going on, and this is how we're going to navigate it. And we need everybody's help.
Yeah.
Because the hiring isn't the hard part. It's the inclusion. I mean, people want a sense of community at work, right? And the inclusion is where I fumbled in my career over time. And that's what you have to navigate.
Right. Yeah, no, I hear you. Well, being out there and up front with us, Tom, is awesome. Yeah. Thank you for coming on Shoe and Show. We really appreciate your insights. Just kind of peeling back the curtain a little bit to show us that you guys are working through things constructively and you have a ways to go, but you're pointing in the right direction. And I think that will help our industry we can all improve, right? We can all find these ways in which we can enhance what we're doing in our day-to-day and build the community that our employees deserve. And so thanks for coming on Shoe and Show.
No, thank you for having me. It's been great.
Thank you, Tom.
So, Sandi, you did a bang-up job. I have to say it up front to all of our listeners. Thank you for coming on, and I anticipate many more Shoe shows. In fact, we're going to change the opening just to make sure that we are more inclusive of our hosts because we're expanding our host base, which is a good thing after nearly 6 years of hosting a podcast. So, Sandi, thank you for joining us on Shoe.
Thank you. It's great chatting with you, Tom.
Thanks so much for the time.
Appreciate it.
All right, folks, this has been another amazing episode of Shoe Show. You can download any one of our over 312 or 15 or whatever the number is episodes in our catalog. They're still germane even 5 or 6 years ago if you go back and listen. And we're having these conversations with industry leaders and diverse voices so that you can better do your job and understand where this industry is headed. We wanted to capture those conversations that are happening at trade shows and at cocktail parties that not everyone has access to in our over 300,000 employee base here in the United States alone. So please come back, listen again. We'll have another episode on Monday of next week. Rate us. We only accept 5-star ratings, so make sure you click on that 5-star. In the meantime, Shoe Show is out.
Shoe has been brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. For information about FDRA, visit fdra.org.